He wasn't a criminal mastermind. He wasn't funded. He wasn't even an adult. Yet, for a brief moment, a government lost control of its own systems. Not because of advanced tools, but because no one expected who was behind the screen. This wasn't about a grand scheme or a state-sponsored attack. It was about something far simpler, and in a way, far more dangerous. In File 01, we saw how anonymity collapsed through patterns. In File 02, we watched money disappear because of habit. This file, however, shows something more disturbing. It reveals that experience isn't always what breaks systems. Sometimes, curiosity is all it takes. And what happened here started not with a plan, but with a question. What if I just tried? This case is a stark reminder that the biggest threats aren't always the ones you prepare for. He was a teenager. No access badges, no insider help, no formal training. All he had was time, an abundance of curiosity, and a basic internet connection. To the people responsible for protecting the government's digital infrastructure, he simply didn't exist. They were looking for sophisticated syndicates, foreign agents, and disgruntled employees. They had built their defenses against known enemies. A bored kid in his bedroom wasn't even on the radar. That single assumption, that oversight, mattered more than any firewall or encryption protocol they had in place. He was invisible, not because he was skilled at hiding, but because nobody was even looking for someone like him. The systems he eventually accessed weren't poorly designed in the modern sense. They were just old, outdated, unmonitored, and assumed to be forgotten by everyone. Think of them as the digital equivalent of a dusty old filing cabinet in a forgotten corner of a basement. Everyone knows it's there, but no one bothers to check the lock because who would ever want to look inside? Most cybersecurity focuses on protecting high-value targets from powerful attackers. It rarely plans for someone with absolutely nothing to lose and nothing to prove. He wasn't trying to steal secrets or cause damage. He was just exploring. And that kind of unpredictable, aimless curiosity is a nightmare for systems built on logic and predictable behavior. What happened next wasn't fast. It wasn't a sudden, explosive breach that set off alarms and flashing lights. It was quiet. So quiet, in fact, that for a long time, no one even knew it was happening. This is the reality of most digital intrusions. They don't announce themselves. They creep in through the cracks, one small step at a time, often disguised as normal, harmless activity. There was no dramatic breach. No alarms went off. No emergency shutdowns were triggered. It was just access. Access where access shouldn't have existed. Each step he took seemed harmless on its own. A forgotten password here, an old unpatched vulnerability there. Each click felt insignificant, a tiny ripple in a vast digital ocean. But those ripples began to add up. He wasn't kicking down a door. He was patiently testing every window, finding one that had been left unlocked for years. That's how most real intrusions begin. Not with a bang, but with a whisper, slowly and methodically, until the intruder is standing inside the room, and no one is the wiser. For a while, nothing happened. No response, no reaction. He was inside, wandering through digital corridors, and the silence from the other side was deafening. He expected to be caught at any moment, to see a warning message, or to have his connection severed, but there was nothing. That silence created confidence. It turned his initial fear into a sense of boldness. He started to believe he was invisible, that he had discovered a secret world no one else could see. And confidence is where most mistakes are born. The feeling of being untouchable is the most dangerous illusion of all, because it makes you forget you're leaving footprints. The mistake, when it finally came, wasn't technical. He didn't trip a digital wire or run a noisy script. It was behavioral. He stayed longer than he should have. He returned more often than was necessary. He left patterns behind. He kept going back to the same digital well, not because he was careless, but because he was curious. He wanted to see more, to understand how it all worked. Each visit was another data point, another breadcrumb in a trail that was slowly but surely taking shape. His curiosity, the very thing that got him in, was now building the cage that would eventually trap him. Authorities didn't react immediately. When they finally noticed the anomalies, the faint digital footprints in a place no one should be walking, they didn't shut the system down. They observed. They watched. Access times were logged. Repeated paths were mapped out. Connections were traced backward, not forward. They weren't just trying to find out who he was. They were trying to understand what he was doing and how he was doing it. With every login, every command he typed, the picture became clearer. The longer he stayed, believing he was invisible, the more visible he actually became. The hunter had become the hunted. The fallout wasn't public at first. There were no dramatic headlines or press conferences, just quiet, decisive intervention. One day, the unlocked window he'd been using was sealed shut. The digital world he had been exploring simply vanished. What mattered in the end wasn't his age, his motive, or even the technical details of the breach. It was the lesson. A lesson learned not just by him, but by the institution he had so easily entered. It was a wake-up call, a powerful reminder that security isn't just about building high walls, but also about checking for unlocked windows. This case proves something uncomfortable about the nature of security. Systems don't fail because attackers are brilliant. They often fail because those defending them assume who would never try. They build defenses against the enemies they can imagine and ignore the threats they can't. But curiosity is enough. Time is enough. And silence is not safety. In the digital world, the most dangerous intruder isn't always the one with the most resources, but the one with the most time and the least to lose. In the next file, we'll examine a case where the most dangerous moment was indeed the intrusion. It was the decision to trust someone who shouldn't have been trusted. Episode 4. How one click started everything.